day, but I'll gut you in the reboot.
Marvel Jesus and the brooding Claude legend are about to transform the Marvel Cinematic Universe as we know it. Not only would the X-Men come into the Marvel Studios fold, but Deadpool and Wolverine will bring in the villains as well under the same banner. With that happening, I thought it was time to explore some of the fiercest and most powerful X-Men villains who have ever appeared in live-action Marvel movies. I mean, think about it. Wouldn't you like to see the likes of Onslaught, Shadow King, Omega Red, etc.? Well, if your answer is yes, let's cut right to the chase. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Mr. Sinister. With X-Men 97's success, we've seen a resurgence of classic X-Men characters, including the infamous and uber-powerful Mr. Sinister. The second and third episodes of the series brought this legendary villain back to the spotlight, with his, let's see, sinister look, much like that of a terrifying vampire, and his penchant for tormenting the Summers family, that is Cyclops, Jean Grey, and their son Cable. Mr. Sinister is a perfect fit for a dark movie storyline. First introduced in comics in 1987 by Chris Claremont and Mark Silvestri, Mr. Sinister was once Nathaniel Essex, a brilliant but twisted scientist obsessed with evolution and genetic engineering. In fact, in a few stories, he has also been linked to Jack the Ripper. Yep, the same serial killer whose murders remain unsolved even today. Although some believe it was a man named Aaron Kosminski who committed the notorious Whitechapel murders. Sinister was born in the early 1800s, and he had become a biologist by 1859. Eventually, he discovered that a few humans are born with mutant abilities, and this led him to experiment on such people. In fact, this guy didn't even spare his immediate family, and in her dying breath, his wife tells him that to her, he was utterly and contemptibly sinister. Anyway, Sinister's dark obsessions drove him to experiment on his own mutant genome, which resulted in a plethora of powers like telekinesis, regeneration, and energy projection. Needless to say, Mr. Sinister is a perfect candidate for a big screen villain, and there are already hints that he might appear soon. Exodus. Bennett Duperry, better known as Exodus, made his first appearance in X Factor number 92. Although a pretty interesting character, he was not shown the love he deserved, and many considered him a waste of potential. His transformation into Exodus came in the 12th century when Apocalypse enhanced his powers and made him almost immortal. Sharing Magneto's vision for a world dominated by mutants, Exodus became a devoted follower. In fact, he eventually led the radical mutant group known as the Acolytes. Initially introduced as a secondary character, Exodus evolved into a powerful villain with his own agenda. His ruthless pursuit of mutant supremacy makes him a deadly adversary, and this guy holds no qualms for death and destruction when it comes to eliminating someone who stands in his way. Exodus has the 90s era's X-Men aesthetic, with his flashy design and melodramatic backstory. Although he faded into obscurity after that era, he remained a significant player in the 90s X-Men comics. In recent years, he's found new life in the current era of X-Men stories and emerged as a member of the Quiet Council in the Dawn of X relaunch. This shift in role has given him a chance to shine and show the world the things he could do. Despite being an Omega-level mutant, Exodus has rarely been given the opportunity to unleash his full power. However, the Sins of Sinister storyline has allowed Marvel to show his abilities at their peak, and to be honest, these stories have revealed the devastation he could cause if he weren't held back by his loyalty to hope and the faith others place in him. So you could say that he's not as evil as the likes of Mr. Sinister. But if Exodus were to fully embrace his potential, he could obliterate entire solar systems on a whim. So what I'm trying to say is that he could be both the X-Men's ultimate weapon and greatest threat. Master Mole. Bolivar Trask created a number of evil things, the most important of which were the Sentinels. But creating Sentinels was turning out to be slower than expected, so Trask built something called the Master Mold, which, as the name suggests, was the primary mold for Sentinels. Once this happened, Trask's objective was achieved, and Sentinels were now being produced rapidly. Unlike the standard Sentinels, Master Mold is a giant, powerful machine that surpassed its own programming, and eventually gained and self-awareness, and that should remind you of Ultron. So in a classic example of AI gone rogue, Master Mold decides that the best way to protect humanity from mutants is to seize control itself. You see, Master Mold believed that humanity was in danger from itself. I know, convenient much? But anyway, as one of the oldest X-Men villains, Master Mold debuted in 1965 in X-Men number 15, and quickly established itself as one of the most serious threats. Now, with AI increasingly becoming part of our daily lives, Master Mold serves as a prescient reminder of the dangers of unchecked artificial intelligence, a concept X-Men comics were ahead of the curve in exploring. The wait is on for X-Men's full introduction into the MCU, and that leaves me wondering which mutants will take on this classic villain next. With so many incredible bad guys yet to appear on screen, there's endless potential for thrilling storylines. You can catch the best on-screen version of Master from the original animated series, where the X-Men and Magneto join hands to defeat Master Mold and his Sentinel army. Onslaught. Onslaught first emerged as Dark Xavier from the 1977 comic X-Men number 106. This super formidable psychic entity was born from one of the darkest chapters in X-Men history. I'll give a brief on Onslaught and his history here, but if you want the full scoop on the Onslaught saga, check out our new channel, Marvelous Long Reads, which explores the Onslaught saga in a 2-hour-long video. So anyway, Magneto brutally stripped the adamantium from Wolverine's skeleton, which made Professor Xavier get fed up with Magneto's cruelty. He used his immense psychic power to imprison Magneto in his own mind and body, rendering him comatose. However, this transformed Magneto's hatred and rage into Xavier, which is how the seed was planted for the monstrous Onslaught. For nearly 30 years, Xavier struggled to suppress these negative emotions, assuming they were just his own inner demons. He didn't realize the true horror brewing beneath the surface. By the time Onslaught made its full debut in 1996's X-Men number 52, thanks to Mark Waid and Andy Kubert, Xavier's buried anger and sorrow had grown into this powerful, evil, hulking force of destruction. Onslaught's immense physical strength matched its psychic abilities, and naturally, causing devastation came easily and naturally to Onslaught. After making his presence known, Onslaught didn't take more than a few months to wage war on the X-Men and any hero, villain, or bystander who dared stand in its way. Onslaught's initial goal was to assimilate all of Earth's sentient beings into a collective consciousness. To accomplish this, Onslaught targeted individuals whose powers could enhance their own. The most vulnerable and yet valuable target was Franklin Richards, son of Reed and Sue from the Fantastic Four. Franklin's vast psychic and reality-warping powers gave Onslaught an even more terrifying edge. By the time Onslaught aimed to acquire Nathaniel Gray, aka X-Man, it had nearly mastered the abilities of all those it had absorbed. In the end, Onslaught was defeated through a grand communion of every mutant on Krakoa. Marvel's latest iteration of Onslaught is a nightmare, as it surpasses the original in power and cunning. While the first Onslaught resulted from the merger of Magneto and Professor X's psyches, the new Onslaught is the result of Magneto's darkness and Jean Grey's power. Jean's trauma and anger, especially during her Dark Phoenix era, make her psyche more intense than Xavier's ever was. This new Onslaught understands the extent of its power and has no intention of keeping it a secret from the multiverse for long. Even after seemingly being destroyed following the events of the original X-Men number 1, Jean Grey and Wolverine from the Age of Apocalypse timeline know that this new Onslaught isn't truly gone. They know that Onslaught could start hunting down the multiverse's strongest beings to absorb their power.
The leaders would
Omega Red. Arkady Rossovich, known as Omega Red, was a Russian mutant with a violent streak from an early age. With superhuman strength, agility, and durability, his most terrifying power was his ability to drain the life force of his victims through retractable bone tentacles. Born in the Soviet Union in the 20th century, he became a soldier in the Soviet army and patrolled the border, but did not stop himself from raping young girls whenever the opportunity presented itself. Due to his gruesome crimes, he was eventually arrested and recruited into the Soviet super soldier program. Through cybernetic enhancements, he became Omega Red and possessed carbonadium-coated tentacles that boosted his vampiric ability to drain life energy. But he needed the carbonadium synthesizer to stabilize his condition, which led to intense clashes with Team X, which included Wolverine, Sabretooth, and Maverick. This pursuit of the C-Synth has defined his dark path, in addition to making him one of the strongest villains in the Marvel Universe. Revived by the Hand to assassinate Wolverine, Omega Red engaged in brutal battles with his old nemesis across the globe. After his death, Omega Red's soul found itself condemned to Hell, where he faced Wolverine once again among other fallen villains. His remains were later used by the White Sky to create clones for Daken's Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, which led to the creation of Omega Red, Omega Black, and Omega White, all programmed to despise Wolverine's X-Force. But despite their strength, they were ultimately defeated by the team. Later, the original Omega Red was resurrected by mystical means and manipulated by his brother Vasily into attempting the assassination of Toma Zaslon, a pro-mutant military figure. But Weapon X-Force intervened and helped Omega Red break free. He then joined forces with Weapon X-Force, which later evolved into a mercenary team. Together, they thwarted a cult led by William Stryker and eventually went on a mission to Hell to confront him. In this fiery fight, Sabretooth made a sacrifice to help the team. At a later time, Omega Red took on the role of X-Men, aka Nathaniel Gray's Horsemen of Wellness, and fought against the X-Men before being defeated alongside the other Horsemen on Quadra Island. X-Men sent him to a utopian reality, but Omega Red later escaped from a secret bunker in Kazakhstan. Omega Red resurfaced in Paris, where he teamed up with Dracula and the Vampire Nation to steal Wolverine's blood. His evil plans were cut short in a confrontation with Wolverine, which led to his ultimate demise.
Who knows if you live or die?
Cassandra Nova. Cassandra Nova, a being from a species of bodiless parasites known as the Mumadri, appeared to the unborn Charles Xavier as his ultimate opposite. She mimicked his DNA and essentially became his twin sister. Charles sensed her dark intentions and tried to destroy her in the womb itself, thereby leaving her physical body stillborn. But as a Mumadri, Cassandra survived as chaotic cellular matter. She clung to the sewer walls for decades, slowly reconstructing herself to mimic human traits. In her twisted perception, Cassandra believed she and Charles were the only real beings and that killing him would give her mastery over the universe. She even manipulated Donald Trask, who is the nephew of Sentinel creator Bolivar, into helping her take control of a group of Sentinels designed to adapt to their environment. She unleashed these Sentinels on Genoa, who massacred its population to weaken Charles. Cassandra then confronted Charles and the X-Men. During the fight, Emma Frost broke her neck, and Cassandra seemingly died, only she didn't. You see, Cassandra had switched minds with Charles. Trapped in Cassandra's damaged body, Charles tried to warn the X-Men, but Cassandra, in Charles's body, silenced the threat with a gun. She also secretly infected the X-Men with bacterial nanosentinels from her bloodstream. These microscopic machines began systematically breaking down the X-Men's immune systems, which left them weakened and vulnerable. The Hellfire Club recently schemed to steal a device from the mansion. While the members initially appeared to be real, it was later revealed that Cassandra had manipulated Emma Frost by preying on her guilt over her students' deaths. Cassandra used this mental Hellfire Club to defeat Cyclops' X-Men and manipulated Kitty Pryde to get her own body, Stuff, out of its containment. Once freed, Cassandra tried to take over Emma's body, but it remains unknown whether or not she succeeded. Now that Cassandra is set to appear in Deadpool and Wolverine, we can begin to hope that the other villains in this list may also find their rightful place in live-action movies. Mojo. Mojo is a powerful interdimensional being who rules over the chaotic realm of Mojo World, home to a race of spineless beings called the Spineless Ones. After being driven mad by Earth's television signals, the Spineless Ones travel around on spider-like robotic platforms and eventually take over the planet to establish the Mojoverse. Mojo basically thrives on creating and broadcasting brutal and sensational TV shows that feature captive mutants. These mutants are then forced to fight each other for his amusement. Of course, he's a master manipulator and uses mind control and other tactics to bend mutants to his will. Not many have managed to give him the slip, but Longshot and Spiral, who managed to escape Mojo's grasp, are considered to be his most notorious enemies. In his twisted dimension, Mojo is revered as a godlike figure, where his shows serve as the primary, or rather the only, source of entertainment for the populace. His sadistic personality drives him to sacrifice the lives of his so-called actors to ensure the success of his shows, and Mojo is willing to do just about anything for high ratings. I'm not entirely sure why this is considered evil, because television outlets in the real world pull off despicable stunts for TRP all the time. However, Mojo isn't considered a significant threat to the X-Men, and more often appears as a nuisance or distraction. Having said that, he has all it takes to be a vile villain. He recently made another appearance in X-Men 97, where he captured Jubilee and Sunspot. It's obviously no surprise to fans, and even casual viewers, that the X-Men universe is filled with strange and diverse mutants. Not only do they have extremely unusual appearances, but also possess an endless variety of powers. But few villains embody the bizarre side of the X-Men quite like Sauron, the hypnotist dinosaur. Yep, that's exactly who he is. Dr. Karl Lykos, aka Sauron, wasn't always a pterodactyl-like creature. He started out as a scientist and psychologist, but his life took a jog to the left when he was bitten by a mute pterodactyl in the Savage Land. The infection left him needing to drain others' life energy to survive. He used his expertise in psychology and genetics to develop a hypnotic device to assist with this. His life took a weirder turn after he drained energy from Havoc, which transformed him into the pterodactyl-like creature known as Sauron. Now, he has the power to hypnotize victims with his eyes, making him one of the most peculiar villains the X-Men have ever faced. The Shadow King. The Shadow King is a mutant villain, sure, and if you look at him, you'll also notice just how demonic he is. However, there's much more to the Shadow King than that. He's a manifestation of multiversal psychic energy and is believed to be a manifestation of humanity's darkest thoughts that are born from the first nightmare. His ability to possess and manipulate people allowed him to tap into their darkest instincts, which made him one of the X-Men's most terrifying adversaries. Because, most X-Men often dwindle between right and wrong. Could you say for sure that the likes of Wolverine, Professor X, Storm, etc. never had any dark undertones to their psyche? Would you say they were as righteous as the likes of Captain America? Food for thought. Anyway, introduced in the late 70s, the Shadow King's origin is tied to the mutant Amal Farouk. When Farouk lost his father and home, the Shadow King offered him a bond and also promised him that he'd never be alone again. Before World War II, Farouk worked with Baron von Strucker to destabilize Britain's political structure. This led to his first encounter with Charles Xavier, who hadn't yet formed the X-Men. Xavier confronted Farouk in Cairo, which led to a battle on the astral plane in which Xavier emerged victorious. He left Farouk's physical body lifeless in a restaurant, but the Shadow King persisted in the astral plane, which proves that he is a multiversal entity. With telepathic abilities rivaling those of Charles Xavier himself, the Shadow King could control the minds of powerful beings like Gentle, Black Panther, Marvel Girl, and Psylocke. When he possessed a body, it became his own, with the ability to repair physical damage. However, being in a host also made him vulnerable, as killing the host could disperse his essence and keep him from manifesting for years. The Brood. Now that the mutants are about to get into the Marvel Studios fold, it's probable that the team's cosmic adventures will soon come to light on the big screen. Among the most dangerous extraterrestrial enemies the X-Men have faced is the Brood, Marvel's version of xenomorphs. These insectoid aliens have repeatedly tried to conquer planets, only to be stopped by Professor Xavier and his X-Men. The Brood is terrifying and intimidating, making them a perfect fit for the X-Men to face off against in a movie. Created by Chris Claremont and Dave Cockrum, the Brood are a parasitic species with wings, fanged teeth, and stinging tails. They have a hive mentality, blindly following their queen. Their method of reproduction is gruesome. They infect other species with their eggs. These relentless villains have appeared not only as adversaries of the X-Men, but also against Miss Marvel and the Guardians of the Galaxy. Their connection to the larger Marvel universe and their potential for sheer terror makes them compelling antagonists. Daken, the mutant son of Wolverine and his late wife Itsu, has many of his father's abilities, including a rapid healing factor and retractable claws. But he also has a few abilities that his father never had. For instance, the ability to manipulate pheromone. Raised by Romulus to be a ruthless killer, Daken grew up resenting Wolverine, and Daken accused Wolverine of abandonment, his mother's death, and his traumatic upbringing. Over time, Daken became a member of the Dark Avengers, the Brotherhood of Mutants, and even served as a Horseman of Death. Daken's healing factor allows him to recover from injuries at an impressive rate, similar to his father. He's survived brutal beatings from the Thing, a massive explosion from the Punisher, and even regrew a lost arm after an encounter with Mr. Sinister. His healing factor not only enhances his physical abilities, but also boosts his immunity to toxins and diseases. Unlike Wolverine's automatic healing, Daken's healing is cognitive and is influenced by his emotions. In All New Wolverine number 28, Muramasa explained that Daken's guilt over not preventing his father's death slowed down his healing. He required inner meditation to fully regenerate a missing arm. Daken, like Wolverine, has 3 retractable claws, 2 on the top of his knuckles and 1 under his wrist. They're far tougher than normal human bones and can slice through durable metals like Iron Man's armor. For a time, his wrist claws were coated with a piece of the Muramasa blade, which had anti-healing properties. To protect himself from these properties, he had adamantium sheaths implanted in his wrists for the Muramasa claws. After Wolverine ripped out those claws, his normal claws regrew. With the power of the Death Seed, Daken's claws glow blue, and they become way more lethal because of their anti-healing abilities. Polaris, also known as Lorna Dane, is one of Magneto's children, the others being Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. She inherited her father's magnetic powers and was initially introduced as a villain who was manipulated by the mutant hypnotist Mesmero. But she soon joined the X-Men and developed a relationship with Cyclops' brother, Alex Summers. Though they tried to leave their adventurous life behind, Lorna was again mind-controlled, this time by Malice, who forced her to attack the X-Men as the leader of the Marauders. Despite her efforts to be a hero, Lorna has faced significant struggles due to repeated mind control, and all of this has brought her a great degree of mental instability. After the mutant sanctuary Genosha was destroyed by Sentinels, Lorna was found among the ruins. Her struggles continued, as she once served as a horseman for Apocalypse, attacked a nurse who cared for Alex Summers, and even tried to kill Alex after he broke off their relationship on what was supposed to be their wedding day. Now, you can expect an attempt on your life if you ditch your woman on your wedding day, and that woman happens to be Magneto's daughter. Vulcan. Gabriel Summers, known as Vulcan, is the energy-manipulating mutant who happens to be the younger brother of Cyclops and Havoc. He was born into slavery on the Shi'ar throne world and artificially aged to adolescence. Eventually, he found his way to Earth. After his powers manifested, he became a pupil of Moira McTaggart and was then recruited by Professor X into a secret team of X-Men. Their first mission went horribly wrong, but Vulcan was saved by Darwin. Empowered and enraged, Vulcan set out on a path of revenge against those who wronged him, including the X-Men. He eventually returned to the Shi'ar Empire, where he began a relationship with the fallen princess Deathbird. He used his godlike mutant powers and a legal loophole to seize the Shi'ar throne and become its emperor. In his new role, he led the Empire into a devastating war with the Kree. After being defeated by Black Bolt, Vulcan was captured and experimented on by aliens in the Fall. They separated all the goodness from his fractured and unstable mind and sent him back, seemingly changed, with no memory of what had happened. But beneath this surface, Vulcan was a ticking time bomb, ready to be detonated at any moment by his alien captors. Proteus. With Jonathan Hickman's 2019 run on the X-Men, characters like Moira McTaggart and her son Kevin McTaggart, better known as Proteus, have stepped into the spotlight in ways we haven't seen before. Moira's character has been revitalized by the reveal of her mutant abilities, but Proteus has also discovered new ways to use his vast psionic powers to aid mutant kind as a member of the Five. The Five are a group of mutants who, along with Professor X and Cerebro, have discovered how to resurrect any deceased mutant. This effectively grants the mutant race a form of immortality, as long as the Five can continue using their abilities. Despite Proteus's shaky history with the X-Men, his newfound purpose speaks volumes. Proteus, born to Moira McTaggart, is an Omega-level mutant composed entirely of psionic energy, which necessitates a constant need for new host bodies. His sheer power burns out any physical body he possesses in a matter of time. Without a physical form, Proteus still wields immense power and can gain strength through his possession of others. However, even with his increased power, Proteus couldn't anticipate Magneto launching them both into orbit to halt his rampage. Magneto managed to analyze Proteus's energy matrix and forcibly expelled him from his host, which caused Proteus to dissipate into nothingness. Later, the Shadow King found a fragment of Proteus in the astral plane and manipulated it for his own war against Xavier after his death at Cyclops' hands.
You mean that itty-bitty soup can?
Nimrod. Nimrod is a highly advanced and sentient sentinel from the bleak future known as Days of Future Past. With nearly unmatched power, Nimrod is a relentless hunter who loves to bring chaos and destruction across time and space in its pursuit of the X-Men. In the dark future of Earth 811, Nimrod was built as the ultimate prototype sentinel, tasked with enforcing sentinel control over North America. During one mission, Nimrod killed Kate Pryde while hunting Rachel Summers, who managed to escape by traveling back in time. In Earth 61029, Nimrod sought the Maker, an alternate Forge. Nimrod killed Storm and held their daughter, Aurora, hostage to force Forge into creating a time machine. Damaged during the time travel process, Nimrod arrived offline. However, Nimrod fell into the hands of William Stryker's Purifiers, who eventually activated him, and he clashed with the new X-Men. Abilities-wise, Nimrod is a highly advanced Sentinel robot, and he's capable of adjusting his systems to overcome any opponent. Its construction materials grant it immense durability, which makes Nimrod a sink for incoming damage. With its superhuman strength, Nimrod can lift up to 100 tons and can automatically repair damage to its systems. Nimrod's molecular-level control over his structure allows him to shapeshift and rearrange his internal parts to optimize functionality. He can alter his size and appearance too. The advanced sensors can analyze superhuman abilities, which enable Nimrod to adapt to various threats by learning how to counter its opponent's powers. With such powers and abilities down his mechanoid sleeves, Nimrod remains one of the most dangerous threats the X-Men has ever faced. So these were the 15 most formidable X-Men villains that need to appear on the big screen as soon as possible. I mean, we've waited far too long. We deserve this. Let's just pray to Marvel Jesus and hope the dream comes true. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.